operated a 100% employee-owned company headquartered in Holland, Michigan. He is an executive board member of the West Coast Chamber of Commerce. And coming across the state, Dr. Bill Pink. He worked as vice president and dean in workforce development, then as president of Grand Rapids Community College, and currently Dr. Pink is president of Ferris State University. Thank you for coming. Welcome. So what this panel is specially selected, oops, I'm supposed to stand over here, because we have John worked in industry as an apprentice and on that apprenticeship committee. Paul represents business and industry, and Dr. Pink, education. So we thought we rounded out the panel with all this expertise. So we'll start. What is the difference between an apprenticeship, an internship, and co-op placements? And please just talk among yourselves too.
I'll jump in on that. Good morning. I bring greetings from Big Rapids, Michigan, Ferris State University, home of the Bulldogs at that division. Yes, thank you. That Division II football national champion back-to-back. Always have to remember, I mention it. You always have to, if you have successes, you have to leverage those successes for all they're worth, right? That's one of many that I get to enjoy at our university. And when I thought about this question, having been at the community college in that world for several years, and having prior to my community college experience was at universities and now back at a university, has given an interesting perspective for me. I won't say it's a better or worse, just an interesting perspective, because you see from various angles. And when you start talking about this question, that difference, internship, apprenticeship, and some of the co-op, when I hear co-op, in my mind here being in Michigan, I always think about Kettering University, part of our state, over in Flint area, and Kettering, where the co-op model is very prominent. And their co-op model basically in many, if not most or all of their programs, that co-op program, for the most part, and some companies, some organizations, some higher education, we will fashion all three of these in different ways. But the gist of it from the co-op model basically will include a student who may spend, I'll just use round figures for my own sake. They may spend a semester in classes. Let's say if they are in an engineering program, Kettering, really good at this. They may be in one of their automotive engineering or some type of engineering program. They may be in class for about one semester. That next semester, they will be at a site, at a company, working for a company. And Kettering has many of those partners who work closely with them in that regard. And that student will be at that company, and basically a lot of that is taking that knowledge base that they had for that semester before, now application, right? Apply it. And may spend that next semester just at that location. Might have a class, but probably not, because the focus is going to be really on the work side of things and application that following semester or that summer back at school. And the way that happens, you have a lot of alternating of those. Sometimes it's with the same company. Sometimes it could be a different company on the next go around. But what that does is several things in terms of that student being able to really engage with not only the education side, but also with the work side of things. And then apprenticeships and internships. We do quite a bit in terms of internships at the university. We were more involved in apprenticeships at the community college. And typically in both of those regards, one of the things that is advantageous for our students, whether I was at community college or here at Ferris now, one of the things that's very advantageous, number one, they have hands-on experience through the apprenticeship or the internship. They're right there working. But for many of our students, internships mean that they also are going to be getting paid while they're working. That's important to us, that the student has paid internships. That's the best direction there. I can go deeper into that, but I would love for my colleagues who actually pull those students in and have worked directly with our students to comment about that.
So apprenticeships, I can talk pretty much about that, I guess. There's roughly 600 different apprenticeships under the Department of Labor. Most apprenticeships are from either 1 to 6 years. Your standard apprenticeship, like if you want to be an electrician or a carpenter or a plumber, some industrial trades are usually 4 years or a certain number of hours.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I started my apprenticeship and it was based on hours. It was 7,328 hours on the job training, and then a roughly 600 hours of classroom related training. So as an electrician or plumber or carpenter, you're in the classroom, you're learning the theory. I was fortunate because I worked a lot of overtime. It took me 3 years instead of 4 years. And I was paid to be in the classroom by my employer, which, some apprenticeships are that way. And I assume internships are that way as well.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's great. So I'm a Laker. That's why John is in between Bill and I. So it's go GV. Anyway, so we've agreed to put our differences aside on which school you should attend for this time, just for the sake of the audience there. So so Cope's Automation Systems. So just a little background. What we do is we build machines that put things together. So a customer will come into our facility and say, hey, I have this box of parts and I need some help putting it together and assembling that. We have a team that dives into that, kind of problem solves that, organizes how we could best do that, and then offers a solution to our customer. So we do everything from, design all the way to fabrication, machining, assembly, electrical work. So we kind of have a lot of different areas that we kind of focus in on. So when we talk about apprenticeships, we do have a organized apprentice program. Here in Michigan, we partner with GRCC. And we also have a facility in South Carolina. We partner with Greenville Tech University. We currently have about 25 students that are going through the apprentice program, and it's been really effective for us. We've also had about 20 students graduate or get their apprentice certificate. And I can remember Brent Boverhoff is the first one that I signed, and Brent did that for a number of years. He got an apprenticeship in machine assembly. And then from there, he actually took his career a little different direction, is now working in our business development team. So when I think so that's kind of just a little bit about our apprentice program. When I think about internships or co-op experiences, so we kind of think about internships. It's kind of like you're going to be doing this thing for a semester. And then as Bill was kind of talking there, a co-op, it's kind of you're linking multiple semesters together, for furthering your education. So we'll do internships, with high school students, and it might be where it's like, hey, they come after school. Maybe they're doing some cutting material, organizing material. Maybe they're helping, clean up an area. Maybe they're helping assemble a machine, but it's kind of like, it's a way for the student to get some exposure. And you're going to hear my theme this morning be a couple things. One is we have to provide an environment in industry where we're getting the next generation of students exposed to what's coming up, what's next in their career. So we do some internships. This past year or currently in the Holland facilities, we have about 5 interns, high school internships. Then we offer in the summer, we offer about 20 internships to college students, predominantly in the engineering fields. And then we also have currently about 20 co-op students, and that's between all of our campuses. So this idea of engaging with where the student is at. If they're in high school, great, let's connect with that. Hey, if they're in college, hey, let's connect with that. If they graduated from high school and they want to become an apprentice, like John was talking about, hey, we have to engage them where they're at in that journey as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. So what kind of a program could high schools implement to aid students in making career choices? And what do community colleges do to assist students in making career choices?
I'd like to address that. I did some research, and there's a career assessment test that people can take. The website is Career One Stop, and the assessment there's 3 different tests. One is an interest assessment, where the individual, these are the things that I'm interested in. You might have like 50 or 60 questions. The other one is a skills assessment. What skills do I have that would apply to some of the different occupations? And then the third thing is a work values assessment. People, we want to work as a team. I mean, I like working as a team. I can work with other people in the same occupation, or I prefer working by myself. So that's just an example of one of the work values. But so they do have tests, and I don't know if the high schools do that, but that's something I feel that should happen. And along with that, there could be, you do the assessment, and then you're exploring different careers, and then you maybe do a mock job interview, mock interviews with different employers. And this allows the students to explore either things they want to do, or they decide, no, I don't want to do that occupation. So I think those kinds of things should be happening at the high school level.
Yeah, one of the things, so I kind of I have a son who is a junior in high school. And last week we had the opportunity to go to Ottawa County Tech Center. And it's a great program. And a few of the things that, okay, what can we do, or what should high schools do? One, I think there sometimes around the tech center, there's this mantra, or I don't know exactly how it was created or whatnot, but it's kind of like, well, if you go to the tech center, well, then you're probably not going to go to college. And I was actually talking to my son about this, and I'm like, hey, I think it would be a great opportunity. We should at least go visit the tech center, see once what they offer, and kind of what next steps would evolve from there. So then we kind of went there, we did the tour, and then and he was really excited. He's like, hey, Dad, this is great. I can be exposed to. So he did, he went to the class we went to was mechatronics. So he can learn about mechanical systems, electrical systems, design of those systems. And he was kind of really fired up. He gets home from school the next day, and he was kind of talking with the buddies, and the buddies kind of said, well, yeah. So, but Dad, then I'm really not going to go to college if I go to the tech center. I'm like, no, that's not the case at all. And so I just think even in how we present these opportunities to our young students has to change. And one of the things I think that could easily happen is, why in the world don't we start, and have this opportunity for tech center as a freshman? I mean, if somebody could try something as a freshman, man, they want to be a plumber. Okay, great. Well, they don't like that. Okay, fine. Try something as a sophomore, junior, and senior, just so that we can, again, expose these students to things that are out there. So I think one of the things that the schools could do is just kind of like continue to bring that career choice, that career development, that plan forward. And yes, I am all about, a higher education. Great. Go to Ferris and get a great degree in whatever that is. That's awesome. But also just trying to expose our students at a younger age to the many options that are out there, and kind of have that be more of a streamlined approach, I think would be really great.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think where we went wrong, two ways. Number one, we went wrong when we exited so many of our career and technical programs out of high schools. No offense against our career tech centers, but think about it. Now there's a hard and a heavy onus put on those centers now. As a matter of fact, I remember before moving from GRCC to Ferris, I remember we would be, because of the building we have here, GRCC here in Holland, I would frequent Holland quite a bit and talking to companies. And one of the things that we would hear quite a bit when we were talking to the ISD out here is that they were running out of space. They had more students who wanted to get into those programs than they had room for. Well, that tells you that we've got to expand capacity. And where's that capacity? Well, that was one of the reasons why at the community college, we tried to come out and we came out into Holland to try, part of that is to try to alleviate some of that pressure, right? To try to provide more of those opportunities. And so that first place we went wrong, I believe, is, and this is a nationwide thing. This is not just restricted to Ottawa County, state of Michigan, it's nationwide. You've had that exodus from the high schools. There are various movements across the country in various places to push some of that back into high schools. A lot of principals are begging and pleading for that, but you have to have money to do that, right? So that's the first thing. Number two, and it's an echo. We have to get out of the notion of this being an either or proposition.
Absolutely.
That should never be the case. This is such a both and. It can be a both and. It's not an I'm either going to go over here to the tech center and that's going to be my post-secondary life, or I'm going to go to college. No, that's why colleges and universities do all we can to work with not only each other in terms of community college to university, but also working with our ISDs to make sure that students see that there is a pathway. There is still a pathway, even if you decide, I'm going to do this mechatronics program. I'm going to do this welding program, this construction program. One of the things that I love about the university I'm at right now at Ferris State, one of the things I love, two of our most signature programs on that campus, construction management. There's a bachelor's degree in construction management. We have folks coming from all over the country for construction management at Ferris State University. Is one of the best in the country. People say, wait a minute, construction, that's in the skilled trades. Yeah, it is. And we still do that work. We do it around not only construction, but let's talk about how you manage. How do you manage a job site? What does that look like? And those folks graduate and they go all over the state for that work. But one of our other programs is welding engineering. That's a bachelor's degree program with a waiting list. So what that tells you is that this is never just this either or. I mean, those students are in bachelor's programs, associate to bachelor's, where they're finishing that and they're going all over the place, getting really, really good paying jobs, by the way. And so the more that we try to dispel that either or proposition, the more that students can then see that there is opportunity if indeed they wanted to move forward from just a certificate, an associate degree, bachelor's, whatever they want to do. We have to make sure that we're mapping out those pathways for students so they know what those possibilities are.
I was going to even challenge like elementary schools.
Definitely.
One of the things that I've seen in so with our organization, you know, we have facilities in Holland, Saginaw, Michigan, Greenville, South Carolina, and Irapuato, Mexico. One of the things that Greenville is doing really well is they have a STEM-focused elementary school and middle school and high school. And this is really a sought-after institution. You know, you have to apply to get in. You know, it is a public school, but it's just it has a program that has a lot of momentum. I kind of parallel it to like in West Michigan here, you know, for a long time that, you know, they started talking about Spanish immersion. I think that's great, you know. And then, you know, now you start to hear about, you know, these outdoor schools like Outdoor Discovery Center is doing a great job developing some outdoor schools. Gentex, you know, is partnering with them, doing some things. It's just like, okay, so some of these outdoor schools are just really taking off. So what about maybe having a STEM focus, you know? And again, it's not like if you go into one of these STEM elementary schools, you have to become, you know, an engineer or you have to become a programmer. Great. You know, it's no different than if you're doing Spanish immersion. It doesn't mean, you know, that you're going to become a Spanish teacher. You know, it's just kind of providing a framework where these students can learn and grow in those different skilled trades and those different STEM fields. So I think there's not only things that we can do in the high school, I think there's things that we can do in middle school and elementary school too, and just more embrace this and kind of let's change up how we're thinking about education a little bit along the way. So.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. One of the things that I talk quite a bit about when I talk to companies is the notion of awareness and exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard for us to truly, let me get that on cell phone. My ears are way too big. I'm so sorry. What happens when you have a big head? So can you still hear me? Is that good? Okay. So I talk to companies and I talk to them. If a student has no idea about what a welding career can be, or even what welding is to begin with, they will never come to you and say, "Hey, can I be a welder?"
Right.
There's this thing of awareness. I'm so sorry. I tell a story about the fact that years ago I saw a study where probably about 12 years ago, saw a study where this study looked at these were inner city high school kids, middle school, high school, and they questioned the students, and they asked them, "What do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up?" Inner city high school kids, and I can't even remember what city it was. Large in the city. There was an overwhelming number of students in that survey that when asked, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" they said, "I want to be a cashier." Why do you want to be a cashier? Well, let's think about this. Exposure. For these students who in many cases may never leave the inner city in their education, in their K-12 education. They never get out of the city. One of the most impressive things that they would encounter on a weekly basis was when they went to the 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
Who's at the 7-Eleven? Behind the counter, there was someone back there who had this uniform on, and they were handling money. So to these kids, that must be a great job. You have a uniform, and you're handling money. You must be someone really, really important. And I'll bet you make a whole lot of money because you're handling money. Exposure. Because that's what they saw. And that's what they knew, because that's the only spot that when they in their life, aside from school and going and doing things in the neighborhood, that was what they thought. That person behind that counter at 7-Eleven wasn't making much money at all. But to them, that's all they saw. About exposure. About showing our young people what possibilities are. So when we talk about at our university about our surveying program, that those students who graduate from our surveying engineering, they go and make a whole lot of money. But how many kids do you know, if you ask them today, "Hey, do you know what a surveying job is?" So when I talk to companies, you can't expect us to send you a lot of students who are all fired up and excited about coming to your job. They don't know what your jobs are. They don't know what a machinist is. They haven't seen that before. So the more we can work with our elementary and middle school and high schools about how we connect with great companies and folks who can say, "And this could be you. This could be you doing this work," but you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the high schools, they say, "We don't have time to do this." I worked at the high school level. So are there any basic high school or community college classes that are helpful to an individual who wants to pursue a vocational career path? You've kind of mentioned STEM.
Well, I will say from the community college perspective, we at GRCC had several things that we would do to try to help students, again, understand what some of these opportunities are. And so it wasn't as much, it wasn't initially as much classes as much as it was having events where our programs would get showcased to help students understand that, even before they made it to us. Some of the things that we are also doing there was getting out to the high schools before they even make it to us. How do we get there and show you and talk to you about and give you opportunities to not only come and see what that looks like, but to also connect you to some of our industry partners. That was important to us, that our partners are there with us, so that not only are we able to show you, here is this cool, really cool profession you get into, but we're also able to say, and here are some companies right here locally that you could work for one day, that they're just dying to get you in. So I'm a big believer that we can't do it without partnerships. I'm a big believer that the school, the community college alone, the high school alone, the university alone, we'll never get this done if we're working in that kind of vacuum. We at Ferris State, at GRCC, we bring many, many, many of our industry partners alongside some of these conversations. Just last week, we had we have a large career fair on campus every fall. And that was held last week. We usually have somewhere close to, get the number, between 400 and 500 companies that come to campus for those 2 days. 400 to 500. And usually over 1,000 of our students go through that career fair. And many of them walk out with apprenticeships, internships. Sometimes they walk out with a job already. And so for us, those levels of exposure mean a lot in terms of pulling our companies close to us. That's the only way we're going to get this done.
I used to interview people for apprenticeships, and one of the things that we looked for was the type of classes they had taken before they came to the interview. I would look for math, some kind of blueprint reading or mechanical drawing, because almost any type of trade that you're going to do, you're going to have to know how to read blueprints, and you're going to have to be able to do math. And the other thing was welding. Welding is it is a separate trade, but there's a lot of different occupations that use welding in their trade. So those three things, if a student is at all interested in going into the trades, I'd recommend those three right off the bat.
I'll just kind of comment on that one. And welding has been brought up a couple times this morning already. And last week with my experience at the tech center, last year there were 50 students that signed up for the welding program at the tech center. Well, they only take 25. So these other 25 have to do something different. So whatever we can do as a community to make sure that there's spots for these students that actually want to take these programs, that they can take them, right? I mean, here's this opportunity that some of these young individuals wanted to further their knowledge base, and they really don't have an opportunity to do that. So whatever this community can do to make sure that those students have that opportunity. I think another thing too is we have to just make sure that we're practical in some approaches, you know. So I have four kids, you know, 3 are in college, 1 is in high school. And one of the things that, you know, it was kind of a requirement from dad was, hey, you have to take a personal finance class. I mean, great. I love algebra. I love calculus. I love it all. But it's like, okay, I think a requirement is, you know, basic finance. You know, how does personal finance look and feel today? You know, and I think sometimes it's like, let's just make sure we're not missing some of the basics, right? I get it. I understand if you have to do a double derivative someday as an engineer, that's important. But man, we got to know how to, you know, select the right home mortgage rate. We have to know how to do some of those basic things as well. I just want to make sure we miss that. So anyway, just a different perspective on, hey, what classes can we take? Well, yeah, let's make sure we don't miss some of these basic ones. And let's make sure we have an opportunity for the kids that want to take some of these welding and some of these other technical fields, that there's room for them.
Is there, ooh, my neck.
Carol, there was a question too.
I was holding questions to the end, but write your question down. Awesome. So is there a path for students who attend area tech centers to flow into positions in different companies?
Yeah, I'll take that one for sure. You know, so we work with the Ottawa County Tech Center, and we also work with the Allegan County Tech Center. And yeah, we not only, when we work with them, we also provide job opportunities, you know, so when the students are at Tech Center, sometimes what they can get is what they call work release, where they'll actually come over to our facility and they'll work for a few hours. So it's just not only are they getting, so this, in this case, it would be a machinist. Not only are they getting exposed to being a machinist in a school setting, they're also getting exposure to that in an industrial or in a company setting. And then that can help further them to be able to say, like, yeah, that's something I'd really like to do. So that also then builds on, yeah, I would say most of our welders, either they went to Ferris as weld engineers, or they went to a couple of the tech centers, and then now are involved with an apprentice program within our organization. So yeah, definitely inroads where you can get apprenticeships if you're involved with a tech center. So it's good.
Are you aware of local companies who sponsor programs to give high school graduates or their employees an apprenticeship or internship? And how do they select candidates? Have these programs been successful? And if not, what needs to happen to have more companies be willing to have apprenticeships or internships? One
thing that happened when we moved here, I stopped at a couple places and I saw people taking smoke breaks on the outside. And so I asked them, I said, do you have apprentices at your facility? And they said, yes, we do. And I said, so what kind of trades? And they mentioned electrical and machinist and things like that. And I said, so how's that working? And they said, well, unfortunately, sometimes the production workers don't show up. So we put our apprentices back on the production line. That is something that shouldn't happen, in my opinion. I mean, if you're on your apprenticeship, you should be able to complete your hours instead of, going back and forth and not getting your 8,000 hours. So that, I know there's at least one facility here that unfortunately does that.
Yeah, we worked with quite a few companies at GRCC. We worked with quite a few companies here in Ottawa County, Kent County, Allegan County, very closely with apprenticeships. And also with what we were doing as well, we're really pushing toward the apprenticeship model being extended further than just the traditional thought of construction, welding, machining. We actually had healthcare apprenticeships, because that model was one that we found, not only us, did we find it helpful for students and for companies, but the companies loved it as well when it worked well in terms of the jobs. But to John's point, so true. The model works when the folks within the model are working in that right way. Because we would have one of the nice things about those apprenticeships, the classes are happening at the college. Some cases we were delivering it to the actual locations. The school is paying, the company, the employer is paying for it for that student. It's a strong win-win for all involved. The thing that has to happen there, that we were very focused on, is helping those students within the apprenticeship still see a pathway in case they wanted to continue their education. Because we would always bring the point to say, my goodness, you just finished an apprenticeship. You got that done. By the way, you're the same kid who told us that you weren't cut out for college work, but you just finished college work. So let's talk about if there are some other things you want to do to extend, because you're probably working for a company at this point who will continue to pay for your post-secondary work. So let's talk about what that could look like for you, because what happens, what we try to make sure of on our end, some students, some of those folks who finish that apprenticeship and they are working in some awfully good positions with awfully good companies. Yet 10, 15 years down the road, I can't assure you that that young man or that young woman still wants to hold the fire in welding doing a weld. I can't guarantee you that. So our goal was to say, here are some other education pathways in case you want to finish that associate's, in case you want to then finish a bachelor's, so that you may now have opportunity and options that later on that you may say, I want to take, and many of our students at our place, if they're in welding engineering, if they're in construction management, because at some point, instead of banging the nails, they also want to think about, what does it mean to be a supervisor? What does it mean to move up in the company? And with some of those companies, some will say, that's awesome if you want to move up, but do you have that bachelor's degree yet? So wanting to make sure that those pathways are laid out for our students in case they see that, I think I want to move on and do and continue that education. And here's the pathway I can do so. I don't want to, I'm all about what I talk about at Ferris. We are all about career paths, not just the job. What's the career path? Because, it's one thing to go 5 or 10 years in that job. In some cases, that may be what they want to do. And if that's the case, awesome. Build a career and do it. But I want to make sure you have an option, and their options are out there. I will say, the data are still out there, and I know you guys have seen it because of me having spent some time with you before, but the data are still out there that says that the higher that degree, the more earning power that person has over a lifetime, the more they make. It's still there. It's still true. And so we want to make sure that if that's what they want to do, that there's a pathway to do that.
I think that kind of comes back to, we have to kind of meet the student where they're at, or the employee where they're at. I have a example of a machinist right now. It's been doing an outstanding job being a machinist. Went through an apprentice program, completed that successfully, and now we kind of going back to that word exposure again that we're all using this morning. He had exposure to working in different parts of the organization. Well, he kind of got an itch where it would be like, man, I'd really like to see, what an engineering opportunity would look like. And now he's kind of diving into, taking some classes, to become a mechanical engineer. And it's kind of like, we have to continually meet the student, meet the employee where they're at, and then help build their career and build that path forward together. So yeah, it's great.
What needs to be included in the apprenticeship agreement to ensure that both parties fulfill their obligations?
Well, that's one of the things that I was addressing with that company I was talking about in Holland. There are papers, it's called an indenture paper. And where that word comes from was back during the Revolutionary War era. You would have somebody that would be an apprentice, and they would be signing 2 copies of these documents. And the management person, whatever they were called at that time, was signing them as well. And they would rip them on certain spots on the paper, making dents. So it was an indenture. And so there needs to be an agreement between management or the company and the apprentice that they will be on time. They will not fall asleep on the job. They will come in ready to go at 6 o'clock in the morning, but then also that they will not be put back on the assembly line to do the job that they did before they came in. And they will be compensated and then become a journey person. And that's a term that even female tradespeople say journeyman. So anyway, I think that agreement is important to make that happen.
Yeah, I think, what John's talking about there is absolutely true. And I think even like in addition to that, you take a giant step back. Well, organizations have to be financially healthy so that they're going to be viable in, 5 or 10 years, so that this individual knows that this organization has a good reputation, a longstanding reputation in the community. Like, no, I can hang my hat on working for that organization. And then that organization has to follow through on that. But it's also, yeah, there's this agreement, but we kind of need to continually talk about that from the employee side as well. So it's kind of like, we oftentimes get where somebody's going through an apprentice program, and then they're like, hey, you know what? I kind of think I want to shift from maybe a machining apprenticeship to an assembly apprenticeship. Companies need to also be open to that too. And if there's a win-win for both companies, yeah, hey, maybe it evolves into where, hey, it'd be best for you to finish the first apprenticeship off and start the second one, or maybe we can kind of shift gears halfway too. But it is kind of gets back to this relationship, and the companies definitely have to stick to their word and what they said they were going to do. I also think too, there has to be like some rewards, and John kind of talked about that, you know, like what can the employee expect to see as an apprentice? Okay, hey, when I graduate from the program, you know, hey, what you know, kind of expectations, or what things can I expect, you know, to be there for me when that happens? Because they're putting you know, John was talking about 7,000 hours. Our programs are 10,000 hours, and classroom is work on top of that. So it's like, this is a large commitment for them. So it's like, okay, well, what sort of reward is going to be there for me as an individual at the end is also important. And making this agreement and making that clear helps those individuals be able to see that, and also holds the companies accountable to that as well.
Yeah, what we saw, and I agree with both my good friends here, what we saw as really effective apprenticeship partnerships with companies were those companies that would outline not only here's what the work side of this looks like, but here from a company standpoint, here's how we're going to help this individual, this apprentice, be successful from our standpoint. So we would have companies that would help in terms of making sure that your work schedule is going to be such that we give you opportunity to make sure you get to class and back, to make sure you have time to work on some of the things that the classroom gives you outside, right? To make sure that there's a relationship there with company and the college, so that you're working together to help this person be successful. Some of the worst examples we would see were if we weren't paying enough attention, or the company was not paying enough attention, and both of us are piling work on this individual, actually making for almost an impossible situation for them. So that level of connection between company and the institution is vital. We actually even had some companies, those companies that get it, as we were hearing about today, get it at a level of understanding what the advantages are. We had one company, in their location, they were welcoming us to come to their location to do some of this work. In one case of a medical, it was an apprenticeship, is actually what they did is they needed more. In this case, it was about certified nursing, CNAs, certified nursing assistants. So they needed more CNAs. It's a healthcare healthcare provider, assisted living. What they did with us is that that's this same vein of partnership. They realized that they, along with you name any other healthcare provider in the area that have a shortage of medical assistants and CNAs, they said, here's what we'll do with you, GRCC, because we want to help you out as much as possible. They actually set up a lab for us in their facility. And I mean, when I say a lab, it was a room larger than this, hospital beds, the whole bit. They said, we want you to just have the program here. Mm-hmm. And we ran a program. I think it's probably still going. We ran the program right there in their facility, and those graduates could go anywhere. I mean, there are all kinds of employers that were employing those graduates. But what that company figured out, quick move, if we have it in our facility, once those folks are done, you're standing at the doors, congratulating them and saying, hey, do you want to, you've been a part of our facility all this time, you might as well stay here and work. Mm-hmm. And so they would just, they figured it out to that point where that investment, because that's investment on the company's part, let's just be honest, investment in space, investment in putting money into, they built out this facility for us. But what they figured out is that the closer we get to the college and the closer we get to the program, the more chance we have of filling some very vital workforce spaces we need And we even have a good idea of just how the kind of quality that we're getting, because those folks are right there in our facility. We see them every day. So companies and organizations with the community colleges or even with the university, those levels of partnerships can be boundless if the companies, those companies that realize those opportunities are really get out ahead when it comes to workforce.
One other thing I'd like to say on that is, as an electrician, so I can speak in that field a little bit, is we would have people that were really good at building electrical panels, you know, putting in the buttons, putting in the lights, wiring them up. And so management sometimes would keep that person just building panels. They wouldn't learn how to work with 440 or 220 or 13,060, I think it is, which is the high voltage that comes in from like Consumers Power or BPW. So management and the union, or wait, I shouldn't say union, the management and the employees should realize that the trade, to learn the trade, you need to learn all aspects of it, not just focus on building panels. So then you're just a panel builder. You're not an electrician. So that should be part of the agreement as well, I feel.
Have some insider knowledge. You had mentioned the importance of aligning with the community college. I recall, John, there were some problems with the community college, the classes.
Yeah.
Am I recalling this correctly?
So part of an apprenticeship is that you take related classes that are similar to the field you're going into. And the college wanted to have a class with at least 10 students. And sometimes you could only come up with 5. And this is in the Flint area where we had 8 different GM plants at one time. And so we could only have, and we only would be able to come up with 5. So then there needs to be some kind of working together with the college that, well, we're putting 30 people in this class. Does that compensate for the 5, the extra 5 that could be in this class? Or is the company willing to pay for an extra slot? You know, there's got to be some cooperation between the 2 areas.
I don't know if you can address this. Compare the cost of an apprenticeship to 4 years of college. And how much can apprentices earn while completing their apprenticeship?
Well, if you look at what college is costing now, it's $30,000 a year. So 4 times 30,000, that's $120,000. You're minus $120,000. If you're working as an apprentice, you're working 2,000 hours a week. I'm sorry, 2,000 hours a year, $25 an hour. That's $50,000 a year times 4. That's 200,000. So plus 200,000 minus 120,000. So there is a difference between what happens at the end of the 4 years where you are. I'm not saying that college is bad or, you know, one's better than the other. It's just that's really what it is. And 30,000 is probably low for the college.
I would say, yeah, for some, and when you think about some of our public institutions here in Michigan, especially, I know a really good one in Big Rapids. But one thing we try to do is make sure that we try to keep that price point, not only keep it as doable as possible, but one thing we've done at the state level is really advocate and work with our state in providing more opportunities for students to have scholarships to help pay for that. So when you think about, this is the first year here in Michigan, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. If you hadn't heard of that one, look into it. At our place, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship can get you up to $5,500. That's really a big dent when it comes to what we do at Ferris, at least. Aside from that, when you think about some of the opportunities around Pell Grants of students who have that need, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship gets a little more than just the high need students. It can get, I think part of where we need to hit better in providing funding is at the middle class, those students who who are not eligible for a Pell Grant, are not that low at socioeconomic, but also can't just write you a check on the first day either. It's that space that we need to do better, I believe, state and nationally. But when you look at some of the net costs when it comes to higher education in our state, and I encourage you to look at and ask that question about net cost, rather than some of the sticker shock that you can get in terms of that, of those things. I also think that when we're talking about some of the areas we're talking about right now that would have apprenticeship associated, when you talk about the value proposition on the back end of it, of what those students would then, after I believe some more affordable directions of getting that degree done, then look at what that value proposition is after they finish. I happen to be at an institution where we do really well when it comes to those students finishing in an area and then working in that area, because that's another thing that we have to keep a closer eye on. The student who finishes in X degree but is working in Y. Now, sometimes they choose to do that, but what we want to do is make sure that if they finish in, we have a professional golf management program, the only one in the state, it's the oldest one in the country. We prepare students in that program to be golf professionals all over the world. Sometimes wherever you play golf at this summer, if you play golf, there's a good chance that the pro at that place that you played, there's a good chance that they're probably a Fair State graduate because of that job. Well, it's important to us as much as possible that if that's the degree that we're getting, that you're finishing, we want to do the best we can so that you're working in that area. That's where the connection with companies becomes so important. Our advisory boards on our campus are so vital because those are companies that are connected to the programs and are pulling students as soon as they finish. If you come to graduation at our place this coming winter or in the spring, if you come to our graduation, what is so cool is that when you're at our graduation and it's in our College of Engineering Technology, our construction management graduates, they do not wear a mortarboard on their head. They wear hard hats in graduation.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the company that they're working for. In many cases, that company has them with all kinds of decorations on them because those men and women are going to work.
Mm-hmm.
They say about our graduates is that they graduate with their sleeves rolled up because they're ready to go to work. And so again, the value proposition is what has to be looked at when it comes to once they finish. That's big. It's a big deal right now at the national level. What is that value proposition? Students, how much did they pay versus how much are they earning 3 years and 5 years after graduation?
And on the other end, what is the cost benefit to the company to have an apprenticeship complete a program or to have apprenticeships?
Yeah, for us, it's a really good value proposition. You know, for us, while we do have some, kind of particular ways, like John was mentioning, okay, he worked at GM and hey, they build panels, they wire machines, they troubleshoot the high voltage. Well, we have a set of procedures and processes that we do. So what for us, the value proposition is those students, those apprentices that are going through that process, kind of learn, a little bit our way of doing that. So that really helps us have those students kind of develop, and then they can go outside and they're getting their education. So they're getting a really well-rounded view. And then once they are, complete that program, it's like they're hitting the ground running. They're really actually running throughout that program as well, where they're adding a great value to us as an organization. And then when they're done, one of the things is, yes, they've kind of completed that program. The next thing is, well, then they can mentor and influence those younger apprentices that are still through that program, going through those programs. So it is a really great value proposition for us. I think it's helpful too, once you become an apprentice, we kind of want them to work for us for a long, long time. But if the life circumstances changes and they want to go somewhere else, that's totally fine. Well, then that company, that organization they're going to, they also know that, hey, this individual received an apprenticeship. at Cope's Automation Systems. Well, that's a good apprenticeship program that's working well. Hey, that holds some value for that individual, you know, as they follow their career journey for the rest of their career as well. So.
Currently, I think you've all mentioned this. What apprenticeships are most in demand?
I can't speak holistically, you know, for, you know, Michigan, what are in demand, you know, but at Cope's, what we offer is a machining apprenticeship. We have demand in that field. We also a welding apprenticeship. We have demand in that field. Machine assembly and electrical. All four of our programs, we have a demand for people to apply and fill those roles. So yeah, there's definitely demand there. On the outside, I have heard, you know, and we've kind of talked a lot about welding. It definitely feels like there's a big need in that area of welding as well. Other than that, Carol, I don't have a good handle on other things outside of that.
Yeah, what I agree. What we were seeing before I left the community college, what we're seeing there had a lot to do with machining, electrical, a lot of electrical. Welding is always on that list as well. And I also think that as technology continues to do what it's doing, whether it be around artificial intelligence, whether it be around just some of the more advanced technologies that so many of our companies like Cope's and others are able to engage with and handle. I think some of those apprenticeships, I think some of the programming, honestly, with what you have at community colleges and at universities, some of those kind of skills, I think will continue to evolve, because I think those skills will tend to shift given what technology is doing. So that person who used to be an apprenticeship that had a whole lot more hands-on with his or her work, that hands-on may not be as much with some level of tools in their hand as much as it is really working the technology with computer and programming. And so those things continue to evolve in terms of what those needs are.
And what I think is happening in the different fields like that is you have your mechanical trade, which is you could be a pipe fitter, you could be a welder, you could be a machinist, but you're in the mechanical trade. And I think companies are starting to group those underneath just the mechanical trade. And then you have the electrical trade, which is encompassing programming robots or running, you know, high voltage or now I don't completely agree with the mechanical part, because I think to be a pipe fitter or plumber, to do it in 2 years, and then you also are doing welding and you're doing machining, I don't know if 2 years or whatever they come up with the number of hours is enough time to be really a journeyman pipe fitter or plumber. I think sometimes the labeling things a mechanical trade is watering it down too much, and it could be dangerous. That's my only concern with that, because they work with steam, you know, and high pressure, you know, oils and air and water.
Okay, finally, how does a recent high school graduate or community college graduate apply for apprenticeship in West Michigan? So what are the actual mechanics of the application process? Any of you address that?
Well, I do know that from the community college standpoint, that can be directly through the college because of all the great partnerships that are in place. That inquiry can happen at that level. In many cases, when that's coming, we hear from the company as well as from the potential student. And so you have a great asset here in the area, not only with what you have at the ISD, but you have a great asset in now having a stronger presence with the community college here on the Lakeshore, because all those, between those two entities, they are very connected to all of your wonderful companies you have out here to get at what that could look like. But there's those relationships. If there's anything I would encourage you to do, it's to continue to encourage those relationships as far as your industries are concerned and your education entities, to make sure those connections not only stay, but those connections continue to grow.
Yeah, and it just, we're talking relationships there, you know, relationship with the student to the community college. Definitely agree with that. I think also you can't ever start too early. And it's like, yeah, try to get in on some of these companies, you know, getting an internship in high school. Okay, well, that just sits really well for you to when you graduate from high school. That's like, yeah, you're kind of going to be first in line to get an apprenticeship program offered to you. So not only can you work through the community college, you can also work through employers because they can come to us and we say, yep, we'd love to have you start the apprentice program. Let's get rolling on this. And hey, here, let's connect you with the community college, and here are some classes that you have to take to fulfill that portion of the process as well. So it's really about networking, getting your name out there, actively pursuing some of these inroads, and yeah, getting that information and exposure helps a lot.
I have a few questions, and you can, we'll open it up. I'll run around, I think, but I have a real good question, and this is from my experience as well. The state mandates certain numbers of classes in order to graduate. Completing these requirements leaves little time for vocational classes. How do we get the state to change these graduation requirements to allow time so students can take vocational classes?
Is that talking at the high school level? Or is that at when
The high school level?
Yeah. There are several nuances to that I believe I think at the end of the day, no matter what those nuances are, I think that the more that public speaks out, and education in our country is such a function of the state, but I think in the world we're in now, education is even more so a function of the local government. And so I think the more that a community pushes on its education leaders and on those legislators that you have who are making rules and laws in the state. One thing we've seen in Michigan, I've lived here now 8 years, a little over 8 years. It would be helpful if we really settled in on what we are requiring high school students to accomplish. Sometimes just in the 8 years I've been here, I've seen things flip so quickly, you didn't even get a graduating class through to see if the last one worked. So when you start in on truly settling in and focusing in on, here's what a quality a quality secondary education looks like, and that is a well-rounded opportunity for students. I think that's where you have to get to. Now, if the state isn't willing to do that, there are other ways. So one thing you've done out here in Ottawa County, West Ottawa High School, our community college partnered with them on a middle college. Middle college, if you're not familiar with middle colleges, huge opportunity. So a middle college, especially here in the state of Michigan, is the allowance. So with middle college of what we were doing at GRCC, if that high school said we want to be a middle college location, what that means is that the community college, in this case GRCC, was partnered with the high school to where in 10th grade, maybe even 9th grade, 10th grade for sure, those 10th grade students who were admitted to the middle college, 10th grade students, they would take their high school curriculum, but 1 or 2 classes with the community college. We would deliver them to the high school. 11th grade, more college classes and still their high school classes. 12th grade, they had quite a few college classes. We were delivering all of them to the high school. quite a few college classes and just a few left, high school classes left. They go a 13th year. Almost all their classes are with the college, maybe one class a semester to finish up high school. When they finish that 13th year, they graduate with the high school diploma and graduate with the associate degree. And they've paid $0 for that. State pays for it all. So what you did out here, what we did with you out here in West Ottawa High School, is that we actually made that middle college. I think it was in one of our industrial engineering, industrial technology degrees, certificates. So what happened is that we were able to combine to where that middle college, they finished that 13th year. It wasn't an associate degree. It was a certificate in industrial technology where, again, partnered with, I think Herman Miller was our partner. Herman Miller or Hayworth, I don't remember which one, I apologize. But those students were going to work immediately, finishing the high school diploma, having a certificate that was already close to an associate degree. If they want to finish it, they could. But it's those kind of opportunities that if the state isn't able to get you down the road, you do it yourself. You get creative with companies, with your colleges and universities. You get that level of creativity with them, and you start exploring those things to where if you can't get it from that state level, create it yourself at the local level that still checks all their boxes, but is able to get you what you need as well. It is possible.
Great.
And another really good question. What about non-traditional students and homeschool students or kids on the spectrum with Asperger's? And it also says career assessment test. So they could have problems with the career assessment test.
Go ahead, John.
With the problem with the career assessment tests, and I know Carol could address this, I'm pretty sure, is you would have somebody that would read the questions to them, right, Carol? Why don't you answer that?
Good one, John.
The moderator here. Well, and time also. Yep, in a small classroom. So anyways.
We did that as, you know, when we were looking for apprentices, we administered the test a little bit differently to people that were, what is it when you see B's and D's, Carol? They had dyslexia, and so we would have somebody read it to them, and then we just made sure that the person was, you know, not helping them out, and they got quite a bit more time to complete the test. So there are ways to accommodate that.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of address the homeschool. You know, there's a great relationship between, you know, the different homeschool groups and like the tech center. We have an individual right now that was homeschooled for a few years, went to the tech center for welding, and now is in our apprenticeship program in welding. So I think there's a really the homeschooling connection with the tech centers and high school. There's a really good relationship there, and that seems to flow really well as well. So
yeah, I'll I hit a little bit of the non-traditional conversation question. So here, I know, you know, a lot of our conversation here, we're talking so much about what we have here in Ottawa County and close, but our state we have a problem in Michigan, and that is we have some what we call higher education deserts, where there just isn't. There's not there's not a community college, there's not a university very close. So that non-traditional conversation becomes very important, because it says that if, you know, those individuals in those areas, if they don't travel, they're gonna have to travel. They're gonna have to travel somewhere to get to a class. If they have no desire to do it online, they're gonna have to travel somewhere. So that's something we have to really pay attention to. Where we are in Big Rapids, we're a university of almost 10,000 students. We're not the community college. There's not a community college in Mecosta County, Lake County, Osceola. There's not one there. So we try to serve that population as well. If you look on our website, you'll find certificates, associate degrees, bachelor's, master's, all the way to the doctorate. because we have to do what we can to try to address some of those very things you're talking about with the non-traditional student, and even in that case, the traditional students. It's something that as a state, we have to do more to figure out.
Here's a good question. My fear, they were all good questions. My fear is that there is still a lot of gender bias around this type of training and job access. Are more females being recruited?
So from our perspective, from the university perspective, we always, I about use the word borderline, we rejoice when we see some of our populations that of programs that traditionally may be male, that we see more females engaged, and some of ours that traditionally are female, when we have males nursing, for example. We do the same thing in that regard. We encourage those young men and women to not only engage, but finish this thing. And typically, I will tell you, in many cases, our industry partners are I mean, the need for talent these days and workforce, the need is so great. I haven't seen the company yet that's going, well, no, they're taking them. If they're prepared and they're good at what they do, they're pulling them in. And they're not really concerned about that as much.
So we were putting on apprentices, and was counseling some people, and this one fellow came in, and he's a member of a minority, and his scores were really good. And because we do a testing, we did an interview, and his scores were really good. And he said, I'm afraid that I won't get on, and people are going to be biased against me. And I said, well, if you don't get on, you're going to be a very wealthy individual, because you're going to be able to sue them. And because there's the documentation, you know your scores, I know your scores. So I think people are much more aware. I mean, unfortunately, there are people out there that do have a bias. I've seen that. When I was in the trades with female electricians, some people are just not right. But there are things that can be done to take care of those problems.
I think too, when I think about this, we're on a journey, and, I look at it when I started my career, and when I went to engineering school, how many female engineers were in that program. And now I go back to Grand Valley, and I look at Orta Ferris and look at the number of female engineering students that are starting the program. It's significantly more, and the number of female students that are finishing the engineering programs, it's significantly higher. I look at the number of mechanical, electrical, controls engineers that we employ that are female now, and it's their trajectory is good. I still think we have a lot of work to do, so I really appreciate the question. And it's a full frontal assault. It has to be, in elementary school and middle school, where we got to remove some of these stigmas that, like, hey, a female can't be a good engineer, or whatever's around that. We have to continue to do that. So when they get to high school and they're talking to their counselors, the counselors are encouraging them to go into these different STEM fields. And then from there are definitely industries and companies that are out there just really very willing, wanting, desiring to hire, a diverse workforce. And that's been going good for us too. So I understand there's a lot to be done, but I feel like we've made some good progress along the way as well. So.
And here's another good question. Are requirements for an apprentice degree set by the federal government?
That is really, from my experience, it's between each state. It's between the state and the company kind of co-develop that program. So we have 4 programs, like for us, we offer 4 apprenticeships in Michigan. We kind of work with the community college and the state to come up with this accredited program that fulfills the work requirements, the education requirements. And we kind of do the same thing in South Carolina. So it's really more done from my experience with this state, not necessarily the federal government.
And it depends if you want a Department of Labor certificate. Like Bill's saying, it's either registered or not registered. If you're registered with the Department of Labor, then you're going to get a certificate saying you're a registered journeyman, whatever. And so that depends.
Yeah, for us, we built at the community college, we would build apprenticeships that were registered because that was closely with some companies that needed to have them registered with the federal government, with the Department of Labor. But then we also built some that were not registered because of the model of apprenticeship, more so than the apprenticeship itself, because the model works so well in terms of the company and business with the college and the student being so intertwined. So it really depended on what the company needed. And some companies, because of union requirements, some companies needed it to be registered. And so we would work that as well. But if it wasn't that need for it to be registered, we just had a great model of delivery and partnership with that company.
So
Carol.
sorry, sir.
I kind of feel like I'd like a challenge to this group too before we end. So if you could just kind of make sure we just have a couple minutes. Or maybe it's I have a question as
Okay.
well. So
Well, they
just
have-
kind of factor that in there.
Yes,
So
we're okay.
okay,
So
perfect.
somebody wanted your website, John, for the career assessment. So you can give that later. But this is a great one. What is the one thing that grandparents can do to help their grandkids get exposed to the career path? And then a similar, very practical question. And what would be the clearinghouse so they would know where apprenticeships are available in Ottawa County? So the first thing, one thing grandparents can do.
Yeah, I guess this is exactly where I wanted to go
No.
with my question. So we can take care of it with this. And that's, I look around the room and I look at all of the different, careers that individuals have had. And I'm sure it would be a ton of fun to just take 10 minutes with each of you and kind of go through your career journey. We have electricians, we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have engineers, we have plumbers, and it would just be great to hear that. So I'm on the board at the Lakeshore or West Coast Chamber. And recently we launched a program where we're connecting nonprofits. They have needs like board member needs and whatnot. And then, hey, individuals that have skill sets, and we're kind of cross-linking these two things together. And I just think here today, how great it would be for individuals to be able to connect with, a former plumber and say, hey, well, what was your journey like? I mean, our young people need mentors. And I appreciate from a grandparent perspective, but maybe you were a plumber and your grandchild has nothing or no desire to be in plumbing, and that's fine. But you still have a great value and a great skill set that there's maybe a plumber out there or an engineering student or a future engineer that would really, really like to be able to talk to, hey, well, what is an engineering career about and like? So I just challenge everyone to, yes, give back to your grandkids, but like John does so well, and Carol, give back to the community. And, hey, talk to school counselors and say, hey, I was an engineer. And if you have a student that's interested in, sitting down with me for an hour to talk about engineering, I'd love to be able to do that. Or, hey, I was an electrician, or I was a nurse, or I was a doctor, and or am, and be able to have that interaction with those students, I think would be great. All of our young people, yep, they need mom and dad. That's great. But they need 3 or 4 other great mentors in their lives. And I look around the room and I just see, 20 or 30 great mentors, for young people. So.
That's exactly the point that I came for today. It's good to know, and it was the target of the course, how do you help your grandkids VOTEC? Beyond that, however, I was in product of the local area for junior high, elementary, junior high, high school, college. I never learned the possibilities, the art of the possibilities, until I got into the military after 6 years of flying jets on aircraft carriers, and then part of the throwaway group after NOM, we don't need you, goodbye, have a nice life. And all of a sudden I went, what do I do? And so that was my first exposure to the vocational strong interest inventory. And the reason I really feel strongly, that's maybe archaic, there's new ones, is because it looks at your interests that you don't know you have, and it compares people that are successful in that field whether they like it or don't like it. That like it or don't like it part's a big deal. We assess kids all the way through by brain power. And so A's and B pluses and stuff, cool. And they get all the attention. Off you go to college, kids. It's the informal influence that starts that thinking, oh, I'm supposed to this or that kind of thing. Well, what if we could take those 7-11 high school kids who are high capability and get them interested and have them exposed to areas they're not thinking of, that successful in their people in their professions have understanding not only savings and investment and the difference between those, but also looking at what they like to do that they don't know yet, what they don't like. When I took my test after the throwaway crowd, they said, you ought to be a dentist. I went, are you nuts? No way, Jose. And so I went and worked for industry for a couple of years and then took the test again and said, you ought to be a dentist. I went, well, these people aren't stupid. So I went and took it and hey, congratulations. That was really cool. I never knew. But also, if you're going back to the community give back, if there was a way to link HASP people with schools or situations where they go in the litter and they pick some of the people that have a lot of potential in the litter of wherever venue they're at, and then expose them for a semester on a buddy program or life, whatever. And it's not just VOTEC, but I've got 2 doctorates and masters and other stuff. I'm an idiot for welding or for cooking or for other basic mechanical skills. Brother, I wish they made everybody take that knowledge, because you get the idea in high school, because you get the idea that that stuff is just for the not college bound kids. And if you can get past that barrier to where, well, we're part of the college kids. Well, the other kids are smart too. They're just different skills. And if they have a dad that doesn't know those things, ever show them to them, then they go, so they should, okay, I said enough. You get the idea. So what's the way to mechanism to more formally link with schools or places that will assign a bright and shiny penny to one of us humans who's interested?
I know we only have a few minutes left. There's brochures over here from the MTech and the Career Line Tech. We're the only county that I know of that has both buildings right next to each other. One is for high school students and the other one is for post-high school. So you might want to check out some of these brochures over here. I just wanted to let you know.
We also made apprenticeship resource links, just a short half page, but there are some links there. And then the last question, we do have time. Is there a better track for students to thrive where English is not a first language?
A better track. Yeah, there tends to be, and again, it's something that I think when you I think about again, I have to go back to the community college of what we were doing. We knew that there were populations in our communities that were struggling as far as finding some of these career paths, mainly around when there was a language barrier. We actually, one of the more successful things that happened, and we had a lot of good wins in the 5 years that I was blessed to be there. But one of the things that we did, and it wasn't me, it was folks who did an amazing job for the college. They built some of the very programs we're talking about, where there was we started out, I think it was a machining certification that was coupled with ESL. So what happened there is that those students in that machining certificate program, there was a ESL program right alongside it, so that they were doing both at the same time. Companies were very connected because they saw what we were trying to do. And those individuals in that program, that was so successful with them finishing both in a very short period of time, because it was a certificate. They finished both, and it was so successful for us that the next iteration we went into welding AWS 1 welding certification alongside ESL. And that was a powerful, powerful offering. We found a lot of success. Because if you're not intentional around these kind of things, you can say all you want to that, well, we're advertising it too. If you're not intentional, it's just never going to work. So it was that in that regard was important.
Great discussion. And I'd like to make a quick comment from a different direction, and it's related to the name of this organization, HASP, Hope Academy of Senior Professionals. And I'm quite involved with the membership committee here. And over the years, we've had many discussions about what does professional mean? Who is a professional? When HASP started over 35 years ago, you had to be a college graduate to be a member of HASP. You don't anymore, fortunately. And it's been a wonderful thing bringing people on. If you are interested in lifelong learning and sharing that with others and the social fellowship aspects of that, we want you in HASP, whether you've got a degree or not. So thank you.
Well, and I'll tell you, the other thing I would say to you, that was the earlier question about what to do as far as grandparents are concerned, and that kind of, and that question, aside from encouraging those young men and women, encouraging them to engage in some of these, what I just call exposure opportunities, send every last one of them to Fair State University.
It's good.
Here we go. UAW sticker there. Well, we have time for one more question, or instead of that, is there any last? Oh, yeah. Yeah. The website. Yeah.
Career one, yeah, career one stop. Career one stop. Probably that. If you look it up, career one stop, I know. Oh. It's career one stop. If you put that in your browser or whatever that thing is, and it'll come up.
Okay, I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you all. It was wonderful.